Verse 716. The primary elements are of different qualities. And how can they produce this world of matter? Rupa is the word here. Each of the elements has its own seat. What are regarded as secondary elements are not made by them. Verse 717 carries on in a similar vein. Fire burns matter. The nature of water is too wet. The wind scatters matter. How can matter be produced by the elements when they are of such contradicting natures? So this verse is having a little dig at conventional understanding. And the conventional understanding was fairly consistent throughout the ancient world, whether in India or in Greece, that the world was made up of the primary elements: earth, water, fire and air. And as a modern educated person, you come to this teaching and you pretty much quickly dismiss it. How can things be made up of these four elements? And that's what's being questioned, particularly in verse 717. Fire burns, nature of water is too wet, the wind scatters matter, the wind being the air. So how can these things, which are of such conflicting natures, actually come together to produce the world of matter as we understand it? So I think we'd probably understand the spirit of verse 717. And verse 716 talks about the secondary elements. And I think this is actually a fairly significant point. The secondary elements are basically the qualities of the four elements. So for example, colour could be a secondary element of matter. And the connection between the two, the connection between colour and matter, is not one that is easily explained. In modern understanding, colour is actually a particular electromagnetic vibrational frequency. Colour is actually a subjective experience. The actual objective description of colour and the subjective experience of colour are two very separate things. How do they connect? I don't think there is any sufficient explanation here. The whole model, the whole understanding, which we looked at in the previous video, that there's an individual here experiencing an external world there, that assumption which is held by both religion and scientific understanding, doesn't actually make sense. It doesn't add up. There's a fundamental discontinuity between a so-called objective world and a so-called subjective experience. And the thing is, what's happened is we've forgotten the map. We've forgotten the distinction between the map and the scenery that it helps us navigate. Reality is subjective, and yet we create an objective understanding. This objective understanding helps us to navigate the world in which we find ourselves. And it's actually very good at helping us navigate this world in which we find ourselves. So good that we actually forget the true nature of this world in which we find ourselves. A part of this map is language, communication. It's an important part of enlightenment practice, of spiritual practice, to put down the map and to come back to the reality of this world in which we find ourselves. And this reality is 100% subjective. There is no objective reality. And when I say subjective, this has got nothing to do with indulging in your own personal imagination, because you too, the whole notion of you, of an individual, is part of the objective map. So when I talk about reality being subjective, this isn't a cue to total self-indulgence, because your body, your mind, is also part of objective understanding. True subjectivity not only transcends all notions of an external world, it also transcends all notions of an individual experiencing that external world. So this is a very important caveat. This subjectivity perhaps should be spelt with a capital S. It's the same as suchness, which is also spelt with a capital S. So a lot of people will resist this. They want to adhere to the notion of an objective world, in which case they need to look at the strength at which they want to do so. This is actually a subjective thing. It's as if they want to deny their own subjectivity, but at the same time they're clearly operating from it. Subjectivity is what we're operating from all the time. It's just that we're not appreciating the liberating nature of it. Instead, we have this net of objectivity enclosing it and limiting it. We somehow think that it's a good thing to be objective. And it is when you're communicating with others with a particular purpose in mind. But when we're practicing, we can drop it. It's inappropriate to bring the net of objectivity into our deepest realization. And this deepest realization is the realization of subjectivity with a capital S. It's the realization of suchness. It's the realization that consciousness can be free. And what does this mean? It means we can open ourselves up. We can open consciousness up to feeling wonderful, to feeling wonderful, to feeling wonderful in the face of everything that is. Life is, existence is. And now you might observe little thoughts creeping in saying, yeah, but life is bad. So many horrible things happening. Well, this is the objectifying mind coming in. This is a net of objectivity coming in and limiting consciousness once again. The understanding of an objective world and an individual here experiencing it doesn't work at the level that we're examining. And that level is the basic truth of that understanding. It's not true. It's a convention. It's a convention which has its uses, but it's fundamentally not true. So we've got the habit of not dropping this belief, and we can observe it in ourselves. Look at how our mental habits seek to limit the wonderfulness of consciousness, the experience of the wonderfulness of consciousness by the belief in a conventional world, by the belief in an objective world, and the belief of an individual experiencing that world. Perhaps it isn't the belief in that world. Perhaps it isn't the belief in an external world which is so limiting. It's the belief in an individual here who operates in this world in relation to other beings. So this is a practice that we can get on with. Whatever is happening is simply happening. Back in video number 7, I quoted a verse from the Visuddhi Magga. This is something we can put into practice. Mere suffering exists, no sufferer is found. The deeds are, but no doer of the deeds is there. Nirvana is, but not the one that enters it. The path is, but no traveller on it is seen. So we give up the idea or the understanding that stuff is happening to me. There is simply stuff happening. And examine how the mind reacts to this stuff. This is our sensibilities and our moods. They're very much in terms of happening to me. Why is this happening to me? Why do I have to go through this? And so on. But can we realize there is simply this stuff happening? It might be painful. It might be pleasant. If it's painful, don't be miserable. Don't get miserable about it. If it's pleasant, don't get excited about it. It's simply happening. We go with it. We don't objectify it. That limits it, even when it's something good. We keep coming back to simple experiencing without the net of objectivity. So when we practice, we drop this model of a world out there and an individual here experiencing it, because it's not actually true. It's a useful convention, but it's not true. So we drop this and we come back to the unfettered wonderfulness of consciousness. This is suchness.